Hello, welcome to the second of the practice guidelines webinars or videos. In this one, a little bit shorter, we're going to be talking about respite care, incidental care, and child care. And this is just the recognition that as a parent, there are times when you need assistance in caring for the children when you can't be there. So we're going to talk through these things, these different types of care. So the first one we want to talk about is incidental care. And incidental care is up to 5 hours per week, and that's per child. So if you have a placement of a sibling group of 3, then that would be 5 hours for each of those kids each week that you could do incidental care for. And this is particularly helpful for like carpool. So maybe you have 3 kids in 3 different schools, and that's really difficult when they all have start times very close together. And so maybe you're going to have 2 of the kids going carpools, and this incidental care allows those carpools to happen without having to get background checks on everybody who might participate in that carpool. And this also would be, babysitting. You're going to go out for dinner and a movie on a Friday night, and you have that incidental care for 5 hours for the kids in your care, and you can have a trusted other provide that care for the kids. So 5 hours a week is the limit on this, and it is per kid. So once again, if you have to have each kid require different care for up to 5 hours a week, that is okay. Now, anything more than that 5 hours a week, now we're moving into the category of childcare. Now, that childcare can be happening in your home, or it can be happening outside of your home. Now, we really recommend that if you're listening right now and you are becoming licensed and you work, maybe you're a single provider or you're a 2-parent home, but you both work, then you'll want to start exploring childcare options now. So talking to your friends in your neighborhood and family members, and whether or not it's going to be a neighbor or a friend or a family member who will do it for you, or you can find a daycare agency. You want to start having some options lined up, because trying to find childcare at last minute can be difficult. So childcare outside the foster home, if that provider is already has a childcare license through Department of Healthcare childcare licensing, then they are absolutely okay to take children in care because they've met the safety standards. Now, you want to make sure that license is in current and in good standing, so you'll want to talk to your caseworker RFC so they can look it up and make sure there's no problems with that provider. Unfortunately, sometimes there are. We just want to make sure that your bases are covered. Now, if they're not licensed, then you'll talk with your caseworker and your licensor, and they will help coordinate to allow a non-licensed provider to still provide daycare. So maybe it's a neighbor who is willing to watch the children. The kids get home from school at 3, you don't get home from work till 6, 3 hours every day, that's going to exceed that 5 hours a week. And so you want to make sure that that neighbor is okay. Then you'll just talk to your caseworker, your research family consultant, the licensor, and they will help get those background checks in place, and any other verification to make sure that the home is safe if they're going to be providing that in their home. Now, emergency care is another thing altogether. Emergency care is, oh my gosh, last minute, I've got to get to the hospital because another child has been hospitalized, your spouse has been hospitalized, you've been hospitalized, something, it's an emergency. And as you can see, these are significant things. These are not, I've got a flat tire. This is, kind of life-threatening, health-threatening kind of emergencies. And in those cases, you can just grab somebody that you trust, obviously, and know and trust, and say, hey, can you watch the kids until we can get this worked out? And if it's going to be, several days, then the caseworker may look at respite care, or, maybe you already have a childcare provider who's in background check that we can pull in at that point. But this is just immediately when I need somebody to help me out. Now, respite care is more planned now. So emergency care is kind of a last minute emergency. Respite care is more planned. So your anniversary is coming up in a month, and you guys have decided you want to go on a 3-day weekend somewhere, and are going to need respite care for the kids and care in your home. And you can do this kind of a couple of ways. If you don't already know some other foster families, and those of you going through right now probably don't, but some of you may, and as you become a foster family, you're going to get to know other ones. And so you may already have a foster family in mind that may be able to provide care for your kids because they take that age of kids, they have openings. You could say to your caseworker, hey, caseworker, this foster home is going to do respite, would that be okay? Or you can talk to your research family consultant if you don't have someone who could do it and ask them to help find respite for your child. Now, in the case of it being someone that you don't know, and that means the child doesn't know them, then you're going to want to make sure you do a little introduction before you just drop the kid off at their home. You're going to want to have a little bit of familiarity so the child isn't totally blindsided when you drop them off on your way out of town. But respite care is to be used, and we really want families to use it because we all need breaks. We all need a couple full nights of sleep, and so we want to make sure you're getting that care. Now, you can also if it's respite care in the home of the other person, then they have to be a licensed provider if it's going to be overnight. But it can be in your home with an unlicensed person because your home is licensed and that person can come into your home and provide that. So that's nice if you have kids who already are legally yours. And so grandma's going to come and stay with those kids. You wouldn't necessarily want to have the kids who are still in care go to respite care. Grandma can stay with all the kids. You would just need to make sure that grandma meets the in-home respite care requirements, meaning she's at least 18 years of age. If she's grandma, she probably is. The RFC will help you get all the approvals in place, such as the background checks and making sure that there's no allegations of child abuse or neglect against that person. We're going to ask them to sign a code of conduct and confidentiality, and then the safety and behavioral intervention fact sheet. That is just any behaviors that the child may have that provider needs to be aware of. So this is a great option, and a lot of our families do use in-home respite care providers. Now, how do you accrue this? So this is kind of like PTO. So for those of you who have jobs in which you earn PTO, it usually is a certain number of days, per week or per month. And it's kind of the same here. You earn 1 day of respite care for every month you have a child in your home, at least 15 days out of that month. And the 1 day, even if you have a sibling group of 3, that 1 day you don't earn 3 days because you have 3 kids, but that 1 day will cover all 3 kids. So if you've earned 3 days of respite and you have 3 kids, those 3 days of respite will cover the respite care for those children. Now, you can only ever have 12 days. A lot of you have limits on your PTO at work too. You can only have 12 days. Sorry, my dog. You can only have 12 days accrued at any given time. And so if you have up to 12, you just won't accrue anymore. And so that's a really good clue. You need to be using some respite. And then once you've used those respite days, you can continue to accrue some more at that point. And you always want to make sure that the RFC and caseworker are very aware of your plans and taking respite. Try to give as much notification as possible because especially if it's someone, you're asking the RFC to find somebody, then it's going to take them some time to find that person. And so you want to make sure you're giving them at least 72 hours in advance of that. And they would encourage you to try to find your own provider if at all possible. If you can't, go to your RFC. So I just want to stress, use respite care, use the incidental care, use child care when you need to, because your well-being is connected to the kids' well-being. Thank you so much.